Trigger warnings for this video. This video touches on the subject of abuse, emotional, physical, and sexual. It will also touch on drug usage. Also, there's a small mention of suicide. If this makes you uncomfortable, please feel free to click off. Otherwise, let's continue. If you were to ask anyone for Greenleaf's most unlikable character, the top three characters will be Zora, Charity, and Kerissa. I do think colorism contributes as to why these three characters are deemed the most annoying, but that is a conversation for another time. For now, I want to talk about Kerissa Greenleaf, what makes her an unlikable character, and how she eventually grew on me. Hello students, welcome back to my channel, also known as the Meeting Academy. I'm Tallulah Chanel, your headmistress. Before I get started, I wanted to first apologize for my absence on this platform. I unfortunately have been dealing with things that has taken a toll on my creativity, which I'm gonna be transparent about. If you have been following me for a while, then you know that my bestie and I have been trying to avoid an eviction, and I am sad to report that we have lost the battle and had to move out. This has taken such a mental and emotional toll on me that it was affecting my creativity, and I had to force myself to do this video. Not because I didn't want to do the video, it's because I was not creating, and then also getting upset because I didn't create. So I told myself, I need to get this video done. I have not uploaded in like months. I need to do something. Now that I got that out of the way, this video will be a writer commentary video in case you were confused about what you're watching. A writing commentary is a video where I will film myself writing either by hand or on the documents while I do my commentary and voiceover. This was something I wanted to incorporate on my channel since its inception, but never had a reason to until now. This kind of video was heavily inspired by art commentary videos I have seen before, and I wanted to do something similar. Also, I didn't make this a podcast episode because I have things here I wanted to show towards the end of the video, so making this strictly audio wouldn't do it justice. For the video, I wanted to work on my Kerissa Greenleaf novella, which I will talk more about throughout this video. But the basic point is that she's returning home to Houston to live with her mother, as she has nowhere to go after the divorce. This is strictly my idea on how I think her life would have panned out after the show ended. Without further ado, let's get started on the commentary. To have a little fun with this video, every time I say any variation of the word toxic, you can either take a shot of something, milk, juice, or whatever, or put a coin in a jar and give the total to a homeless person or something. Some people may have clicked on this video and have no idea of who Kerissa Greenleaf is, so let me introduce her. Kerissa Greenleaf is a character from Greenleaf, a primetime drama about a family that runs a megachurch in Memphis. This show originally ran on the OWN network from 2016 to 2020 and is now currently streaming on Netflix. Kerissa is the wife of Jacob Greenleaf, a pastor and only son of Bishop James and Lady Mae Greenleaf. She is the mother of my favorite character, Zora Greenleaf, and her brother, Jacob Jr. Greenleaf, commonly known as Winky. Fun fact, I thought it was funny in an ironic way that Winky was played by twins while Lovey Simone herself just happens to be a twin. We don't know much about Kerissa's past other than the fact that she grew up in Houston and that she has a rocky relationship with her mother, which I will get more into later. We do know that she's a businesswoman that runs Excellence Academy, the private school associated with the church, and where Zora and Sophia attend. Last but not least, she's played by the amazing Kim Hawthorne, who has been in the industry for years and really deserves her own show. She has played some memorable side characters like Theo from Jeremiah, but I would love to see her actually lead something. Okay, fun fact, I have a theory. If Kerissa and Theo were to meet, they probably wouldn't like each other, but have a somewhat of a mutual understanding. Originally, I was going to start off my commentary by talking about why Kerissa is an unlikable character. But every point I wanted to make, even down to the reason she grew on me and my issues with the show's writing, kept circling back to one thing: her mother. Mind you, Carissa's mother in canon is a nameless, faceless woman. Yet I feel as if she's the root cause of the problem that is Kerissa Greenleaf.
My mother, she always treated me like I was her greatest competition.
From that clip, I have gathered that Kerissa may have grown up in a toxic environment, which has led to her marrying into another toxic environment, as well as her emotionally neglectful relationship with her daughter Zora. I talked about this briefly on my podcast during an episode called Zora Greenleaf Isn't Fast, She's Emotionally Neglected. I will link that episode in the description. Please go listen to it, as it is one of my favorite episodes. Now, to get into why Kerissa is unlikable, I want to first insert a TikTok from Jessica underscore screenwriting 101. Ironically, I found this creator during that time I wanted to do a Zora Greenleaf novella, which I still might do, and she broke down Zora's character really well. So imagine how giddy I was when she uploaded her video about Kerissa that validated some thoughts I already had.
I never was a fan of Kerissa either because Kerissa had this whole like holier than thou attitude. And it's one thing to be a Christian and have God as your center and everything like that. But it's another thing to look at people like, oh, I'm so perfect and look at you, you sinner, and all that kind of stuff. And that's how she came at Grace. She didn't understand or even try to understand that Grace ended up leaving the family for a while because of the toxicity and because of all the secrets that were being kept, like what happened to their sister Faith. Why did Faith end up committing suicide, right? Faith ended up doing that because she was being violated by their uncle, their mom's brother. And Lady May, their mother, had a feeling that this was going on, but she chose to believe her brother over her own children, over her daughter. And that is why Grace had all this resentment towards Lady May and why they had this rift throughout the whole series. And Kerissa was just very like unapproachable. Even her daughter had issues with just coming to her and confiding in her because she was so judgmental. And it goes back to this quote, you know, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. And people like that, they're impossible to get along with. And like I said before, when I talked about her and Jacob, Kerissa should have been gone. The only reason she really stayed in that relationship, that fake marriage, was to save face. She didn't want to be like a quote unquote bad Christian woman, but ironically, she ended up doing something much worse. She tried to play his game and tried to play it better than him and ended up catching a whole STD. And that just goes to show you're better off taking the high road and just, you know, leaving and chalking it up as a loss and being like, okay, it didn't work, but at least I've got my dignity and my class and my self-respect. But no, now Jacob, as grimy as he is, as reckless as he is now looking at her like, oh, you're even worse than me. Even when I cheated on you, I never gave you a disease. And while that's true, he was doing his own dirt too, but it just goes to show that Kerissa was willing to be in all this toxicity just to say, oh yeah, I'm married, and I'm married to a member of the prominent Greenleaf family. Dumb.
Dumb. Now, I have listed 5 reasons why I found Kerissa unlikable, and I will give more detail about that. So, reason number 1, she has a holier than thou attitude. From the moment we meet Kerissa at the family table, we are put off by the way she questions Grace and her spirituality. And we already get the sense that she's very by the book to the point where she forgets compassion. One situation that comes to mind is the time she found condoms in Zora's room. Instead of coming to her with compassion and understanding, she immediately reprimanded her for being irresponsible, and then she stopped Zora for rightfully calling her out on her hypocrisy.
Making your father wait until we were married earned me his respect.
Did it?
Now, Kerissa wasn't wrong for telling Zora to know her worth and banning Isaiah from the house, but it would have been sweet if it wasn't for the hostility that was displayed before that moment. That's actually the segue into my next point, which is she's disrespectful. And here's the thing, I don't think Kerissa be wrong in some of the things she says, but the problem is how she says them. Kerissa is a straight, no chaser person, which isn't inherently a bad thing because people like that are very forward about what they want, their expectations, and they don't beat around the bush or sugarcoat what they mean or how they feel. As someone that likes direct answers and not hint chops, I can appreciate that. However, being that kind of person can be off-putting because of the lack of empathy and unwillingness to understand the other person's perspective. And this is one of the reasons why she's so unapproachable. For example, in the scene with her and Lady May, I do think May has issues taking accountability for the part she played in the things that happened. But was it necessary to call her an old rusty jalopy with a corpse in the trunk? Like, point valid, wording could have been better. Her tone was just rude and disrespectful, and honestly, it earned her that slap. Reason number 3 is her toxic marriage, and please bear with me because I have paragraphs on this. In all the material I like to entertain, I deem Jacob and Kerissa as the worst ship ever. They're even worse than Takeem, and the only reason I wanted to give Takeem a pass is because they're in their 20s. Jacob and Kerissa are in their 40s. They should know better. Zora and Isaiah is a close second because of the abuse, but even Isaiah has time, space, and opportunities to change if he really wanted to. So taking a moment to be honest with myself about something, if the handsome Lamont Rucker was not casted as Jacob, I would not like him. Even now that Lamont's going gray, he's still handsome to me, but I can admit that I have allowed that to cloud my judgment about Jacob. Now, the term mutual abuse is controversy because even some therapists believe it's not real, so I don't want to use it. But I don't know how else to describe their dynamic. There's a term called reactive abuse in which a victim starts acting aggressively towards their abuser. And when it comes to cheating, I deem it as a form of emotional and sexual abuse because it diminishes the self-worth of the person being cheating on, and the person that's cheating doesn't care enough about their partner's sexual health to not cheat on them. Bear in mind all those things I said as I go through this next part. In Jacob and Kerissa's case, I don't know who started what and who's reacting. It was implied but never confirmed that Kerissa cheated first. We don't know if it was sexual or emotional. We just know it probably happened. She did have a friendship with one of her teachers that could have led to an affair if she hadn't shut it down. But by that point, she and we as the audience are already made aware that Jacob is having a full-blown affair with a woman named Alexa, who he would have left Kerissa for if Alexa wanted him to. We also know that part of the reason why Jacob cheats is because she's disrespectful and a bit controlling, and no one wants to deal with that in their home, spouse or not. But the reason it's hard for me to decipher who's the real abuser in their relationship is because we don't have enough context to know if he started cheating on her because she's mean and controlling, or if she's that way because he started cheating on her. And if she was the one to cheat first, then Jacob was allowed one get back, but he still continued, which means he didn't care enough about her feelings or her sexual health. And also, he has gaslit her, and she gaslit him. They are both terrible. It's almost like BAS by Megan Thee Stallion. Which brings me to my next bullet point about their marriage. He just doesn't like her. I figured this out doing my semi rewatch and saw in episode 103, literally the third episode of the show. So in this episode, Kerissa wants Jacob to build trust and rapport with the deacon board so they respect him, as well as getting points against Grace. Part of doing that, they decide to have dinner with one of the deacons named Misty and her husband. It is at this dinner that the couple tells this beautiful story about how they got engaged because he just knew that Missy was the one. This motivates Kerissa to rekindle the love she and Jacob once had and to rebuild their marriage. So the next morning, which just happens to be Sunday, mind you, she tells him that she wants to start counseling so they can rebuild that love they once had. And he immediately brushes her off and turns away from her. When I rewatched and saw how heartbroken she looked, I got sad for her. But then I got frustrated with her character all over again because she should have left. Like, ma'am, that man doesn't respect you. He obviously doesn't love you. You're a baddie without him. Leave that man, leave that toxic family, and just be great on your own. Hi. So, last night when I was editing some parts of the audio for this video, I came across a scene from season 3 that kind of bothered me, and so I wanted to speak on it a little bit because it is still fresh in my mind. So to give context, in this episode, Kerissa had been feeling a little down because she's having issues balancing being the headmistress at Excellence Academy and being the first lady at Triumph Church. So Jacob's way of like cheering her up was to give her this necklace. And it was kind of a tacky necklace if we're being honest. But I thought that moment was cute. You know, that he recognized where her emotional death was and what he was doing to kind of lift the innocence. Until she walked out of that scene and we see that he's looking at a picture of Tasha in that same necklace. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if that was like Tasha gave him the necklace as a gift or something, or if he just bought another necklace that looked like the one Tasha had, or if he just, I don't know, just happened to have the necklace. I don't understand that like part because I didn't watch the episode in its entirety. I found it interesting in lack of a better word, but it really just did not sit right with me, and it had me just thinking, Jacob, what are you doing? For this next point, I'm just reiterating that I think one of the issues with their marriage may stem from Carissa's upbringing, which sounded toxic. When you grow up in that kind of environment, you tend to be attracted to other toxic environments. So I truly believe she chose a husband that conforms to a toxic pattern, or vice versa, because Jacob too grew up in a toxic environment. So them being together makes sense when you consider those factors. However, if these two broken individuals were coming together to work on themselves and dissing themselves from the toxicity and were healing together, then I would actually like them as a couple. These are two broken people who hurt each other and in turn their daughter suffered. This is why I truly believe they're the reason Zora got into an abusive relationship besides the emotional neglect. Because look at the example she has to look up to. And last thing about their marriage, they gave off the vibes that they were forced to be together. I have a theory that Lady Mae forced them to marry because Kerissa was pregnant with Zora and she didn't want Jacob to bring a child into the world unwed. If that's the case, that would make everything about their marriage make sense. But again, we don't know, and I would have loved if the writers explored that. Hi, editing Tallulah popping in because my best friend just brought to my attention that it was she who came up with the theory, and I just agreed upon it because at some point I figured out that made sense. Now, the fourth reason I think Kerissa is a unlikable character is because she's a bad mom. On the Zora Greenleaf is emotionally neglected episode of my podcast, I did a section on how I think Kerissa is a bad mom. But I can admit when I'm hard on someone, I still think she's emotionally neglectful when it comes to Zora. But she truly does love her children. Once again, bringing up how I believe Carissa grew up in a toxic environment, it shows in her parenting style. For one, it seems like she has Zora at arm's length. Like she's comforting to Zora if Zora needs comfort, but she's kind of not vulnerable with Zora. And I understand that kids are not friends, boundaries need to be in place, and parents shouldn't trauma dump on their children. However, even good moms have some form of vulnerability with their kids within set boundaries. And going back to the clip of her finding condoms in Zora's room, she was so mad at Zora for clocking her tea, but she was also loving in her admonishment about self-worth. And there are other instances where she's comforting towards Zora, which means Zora has to feel some type of safety with her. And another issue that comes with Carissa's parenting style is her inability to accept anything less than excellence. She literally named her school Excellence Academy. Like, let's start there. Because of this, Zora feels pressure to always be good in school to the point that she coped by snorting pills. Now, here's the part where I play devil's advocate for a minute. Season 1 Zora does seem like the kind of student that tries to skate by on the bare minimum and doesn't try to apply herself except in things she's passionate about, like acting. Still, I can't ignore the fact that Carissa's need for perfection contributed to Zora developing a drug problem that was never addressed. I'm just glad it didn't get worse. And for the last reason why I find Kerissa to be unlikable is her lack of self-love, which is obvious by the way she treats people and the fact that she stays with a man that keeps hurting her. I talked about her mother earlier and how I felt that she's the root of the problem that is Kerissa. Carissa's mother treated her like competition. So I wanted to research what that could mean, and from the few experiences I read from women who has had mothers like that, I can infer that Kerissa had a verbally and emotionally abusive mother, and my best friend theorized some physical as well. A mother like that doesn't validate their children, especially their daughters, and does anything and everything to keep them down. So couple that with marrying a man who doesn't value her enough to be faithful. How can someone who hasn't done the work to know their value and worth? Even more so, how can that someone teach their daughter? If Kerissa loved herself, she would not have stayed with that man. I understand wanting to make the marriage work, staying married for the sake of the children, and the scandal that will ensue if a member of the first family were to divorce. But at the same time, she should have chosen her mental and emotional well-being over all of that. Being together did more harm than good for them, their children, and Kerissa's self-worth. Now, concluding the section about her being unlikable, it might make you question how was she able to grow on me? And just like I have a list of reasons as to why she's unlikable, I have a list of reasons for that as well. For starters, I'm an empath. And while it's easy not to feel sorry for Kerissa, I can't help it. Part of the reason I feel bad is because Jacob didn't like her. I can only imagine what it must feel like to be married to someone who doesn't like you. Plus, her ending felt so open-ended, it made me question what life means for her now that she's out of that toxic marriage and toxic home. And in some weird way, mainly because I'm a hopeless romantic, I wanted to know if she would allow herself to love and be loved by someone that can actually appreciate her. I just wanted a happy ending for her. Which brings me to my novella. I started this novella because I wanted to explore her mommy issues and have her confront them. I became interested in the concept while I was working with my best friend on ideas about the Greenleaf Empire crossover that we're still working on. I wanted to have Zora find some common ground with her mother and learn to establish boundaries, but I felt like an understanding between them wasn't going to happen without Kerissa getting some common ground with her own mother. To reiterate, the show never gave Carissa's mother a name or a face, so I took creative license to create who I think her mother is, how she would be, and the kind of childhood Kerissa had. During the research I talked about earlier in preparation for writing this, I learned that some mothers treat their daughters like competition because the mother resents the child's father for leaving them, and I chose to settle on that as the reason for Chris's mother and build a backstory out there. However, it wasn't until after I wrote an entire backstory with this idea that I learned that Kerissa had a nameless and faceless father. But I chose to use my creative license to stick to my idea because I didn't feel like changing it. And who's going to police me about it? And even if this story doesn't end with her healing, I wanted to use this as a jumping off point to kickstart a healing journey and maybe find love again. I just really want her to heal. Also, in this novella, I gave her a childhood best friend that she reconnects with after almost 20 years. This character is interesting. Like, not the kind of person one would assume Kerissa would be friends with, but I like exploring opposite attract friendship dynamics. Plus, she was in desperate need of a friend because she really should not have been dealing with all she was going through by herself. Another reason that made Kerissa grow on me has to do with an interview Kim Hawthorne did with Black Cinema Now discussing what it was like to work on the set of Greenleaf, as well as some thoughts about the character she's portraying. Honestly, I enjoy hearing Kerissa from her perspective because it reminds me that even if the characters do things the actors don't fully agree with, they shouldn't judge their characters because it won't allow them to perform the truth of that character. As a writer and non-acting creative, I feel like that's a gem I can appreciate, especially when it comes to fan fiction and commentary works. This interview made me rethink a lot of things about Chris's character and was actually the initial inspiration for this video. I would like to officially retract the statement I made on my podcast about Kerissa being a gold digger. At the time I initially made this statement, I had forgotten she owned the school and that their little family lived off her income in season 2. And while I'm at it, let me retract another statement I made about her not supporting Jacob's ministry because I realized that she did want to support what he wanted, but because it wasn't paying their bills, she was getting frustrated with him dragging his feet about getting a job. The house they were living in was in desperate need of repairs to the point that they didn't have electricity for a few hours, which is not a healthy environment for children, especially a child as young as Winky. And I understood both sides of that argument, but neither of them were willing to hear the other one out, and instead they just told each other what they need to be doing. As for Kerissa, this was another one of those moments where she made valid points, but it comes off as crude and makes the other person defensive. Next, I want to talk about the house thing and how this interview gave me a different perspective on that. If you know me, you know I hate talking about seasons 4 and 5 of this show. I felt like the writing and characters became more frustrating, especially Kerissa and Charity. Now, we can all agree that Kerissa was doing the most for a house she didn't get. And some of us could say that we didn't understand why she would want to leave that luxurious mansion where she didn't have to pay bills. As a creator who loves to create but uses most of her energy to work jobs I don't like or want, it sounds ideal to live in a big mansion that I don't have to pay bills and just create. But I have to remember that that house and that family is toxic, so I can't help but understand the want to get out of there. Carissa was doing everything possible to get out of that mansion and enter her own home, including sleeping with a shady man and going through the family safe. In this interview, Kim Hawthorne said something that stuck out to me. Basically, Carissa wants to be the queen of her own castle and wants a space where she can be herself. And that Jacob needs to let go of his mother's apron strings and stop letting her make decisions for him. From that aspect, I understand why Carissa did what she did. I just don't agree with the ways she went about it. Plus, no one is allowed to be the queen when Lady May is around. I don't make the rules. Now, this part is a little off topic, but because I brought it up in this bullet point, I wanted to speak on it. Two wrongs don't make it right. So, I don't agree with Carissa having to get back with Fernando, especially doing it without a condom. On the other hand, I don't think she should regret it because Jacob has humiliated her through their entire marriage. And I really don't agree with her gaslighting Jacob because wrong is wrong and it's wrong to gaslight people. Despite this, I do think Jacob overreacted. How can he cheat with multiple women and gaslight her, but then want to end the marriage because she did it to him? You know what? He freed my good sis, so a win is a win. Honestly, I think a man wrote this, and it felt so ridiculous to me that I almost didn't include it in my novella. But I wanted to explore the psychological reasons behind it, so I'm keeping that ridiculous storyline. Going back to that line about Carissa's mother treating her like competition, according to Kim Hawthorne in this interview, the line was originally written to say that her mother was always disappointed in her, but she didn't think it would make sense for her mother to be disappointed in a college graduate with accolades and a businesswoman. And I agree. In essence, it was her idea to say that Carissa's mother treated her like competition. I brought it up to say that I almost retracted my statement about the writers until I remember that even with the line change, the writers still wanted to introduce this toxic mother-daughter dynamic and not really do anything with it. And the last thing I wanted to bring up about the interview is they mentioned how Chris is a strong character. And as annoying as Carissa comes off, we can admit that she's an ambitious go-getter and she will still really be great and thrive without Jacob. However, I feel like Carissa is one of those characters that could benefit from a partner who can appreciate her tough attitude, but makes her feel safe enough to be vulnerable and not strong all the time. Kim Hawthorne has stated in this interview that Jacob is worthy and can benefit from having Carissa as his partner. The two of them just could never get on the same page. In my humble opinion, I feel like they're not what each other need. Even though I'm not a Jacob and Tasha shipper, I can see him pairing well with her because she's a calming presence and someone that can let him leave without stepping on his toes. Carissa is just not that partner, and it's not a negative reflection on her. It just shows that they're not right for each other. All in all, Carissa grew on me because I had started to see the good aspects about her character and realized what she needed, and it wasn't the Greenleaf family. She should have avoided that family like the plague. And honestly, I believe her leaving that house was a blessing that she hadn't realized yet. Now, here's the part where I get a little mad and ranty, and it has to do with my issues with the writing. And it's the same thing I said about Tiana Brown from Empire. Who is this person outside of the main cast? We got 5 seasons of Greenleaf. Technically 4 because season 5 was just part 2 of season 4. Either way, the writers had more than enough time to flesh out Chris's character, and they did it. Even Kevin, for his limited time there, was more fleshed out. And I understand because he represents a marginalized group, but we even got to see his mother and see him move on with another lover. But why is Carissa's family so faceless and nameless? In fact, I didn't even know she had a dad until I heard it in a throwaway line that I don't remember. And by that point, I was knee deep in the backstory I created for her that I did not feel like changing it. She doesn't have friends. Like, I understand that people may not want to be around her because she's so nasty, but I know it has to be someone in that school or that church that was just as nasty as her. And they could have been two nasty besties together. Anyone besides Dick and Connie Sykes, although they do have similar agendas and neither of them like Lady May. Let me stop before I go down an unnecessary rabbit hole. More importantly, she should have gotten a backstory because, again, there's no reason why her family is so nameless and faceless and why her upbringing is so ambiguous, especially when it comes to her mother. I'm going to bring up the character Nikki because she's another issue I have when it comes to this show's rating. The presence of her character annoys me because she's so useless and unnecessary. She ended the story after Zora escaped her abuser and made a move on her that made us question her sexual identity for 2 minutes and caused drama just to give Lovey, Simone, and Desiree something to do. I don't care about Zora's sexual identity, and yes, I understand that's important, but I don't, in that moment, I didn't care about it, or if she can have a friendship with people who don't believe in the Bible, or why Sophia is fighting this girl over some average looking boy. I wanted to know, how is Zora healing from leaving her abuser, and what is her family doing to support her? And why didn't her parents drag her to therapy the first time she ran off with her abuser instead of locking her down like a prisoner? Hi, editing Tallulah here. So, while I was going through episodes of season 3 to look for something that I have yet to find, I came across a moment where it was implied that Zora was in counseling. Basically, Kerissa was saying that she's gonna go pick up Zora from counseling. So basically, I have to retract my statements that I have made several times about her parents not dragging her to therapy the first time. But herein lies my issue with that and why it's a big writing problem. This show has a big problem when it comes to telling and not showing. And the issue with telling and not showing is it limits our experience as the audience to be fully immersed in the story. And when it comes to Zora's storyline with her running after her abuser, seeing her in counseling or therapy was something that was important. So they really should have actually had some scenes with her in therapy and trying to do the work or whatever. The fact of the matter is, it would have made the parents look like they were trying. It just really seemed like they were too focused on other things than their daughter, which is the same thing I talked about before. And this is why it looks that way, because they never showed the parents actually doing anything. All in all, it just feels like the show writers didn't know how to handle an ensemble cast. And if that was the case, they could have easily just made this show about Grace, Lady Mae, and their rocky relationship. And yes, I understand this is not the Kerissa Greenleaf show or the Zora Greenleaf show. This is a show about the Greenleaf family, but somehow the only characters that had full circle developments were Grace and Lady Mae. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure if I mean this for Kerissa, but I definitely mean it for Kim Hawthorne. She deserved better. And I'm adding that I deserve better. Now that we're at the end of my commentary, the only question that remains is, where do I currently stand in my thoughts on Kerissa? Honestly, I'm completely in the middle. While I find her character frustrating both in writing and actions, I still feel like she had the potential to be great. I really would have liked to have seen her heal from her mommy issues, heal from her toxic marriage, and work on her own toxicity. Be her own person, and maybe find someone else that can appreciate and love on her properly. That's partially why I'm writing this novella. I really do find her to be a compelling character. But at the end of the day, I am not a Kerissa Greenleaf apologist. If anything, I'm a Zora Greenleaf apologist because Zora is a young girl that still has a lot to learn about life. Kerissa is a full-grown adult who should know better. I did this video in hopes to bring nuance to her character. I either succeeded or failed, but I tried. And if you still see her in a bad light after watching this video, that's fine because she is a piece of work. But if you manage to see her through a different perspective, I'm glad I was able to do that for you. And if you think I just said a bunch of nothing, I don't know what to say to that. So that concludes my commentary for this video. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. A creator on The Sims 4 created the Greenleaf family, so I decided to take that Kerissa Greenleaf sim and edited her to fit a headcanon I've had in my head about her being a painter and a guitar player in her teen years. This headcanon started because I created an OC original character for people who are not in the fanfiction community named Brock, who is an independent singer-songwriter in the rock and alternative music scene in New York. Yes, this is related to my Greenleaf Empire crossover, which I still plan to do, but I'm trying to get on a similar page with my bestie so she can help me with this. This Kerissa Greenleaf saga is a spin-off of that. In this headcanon, I imagine that she was an alternative team that like rock artists like Jimi Hendrix, Tina Turner, and Tracy Chapman has a grunge slash hippie goth aesthetic and paints. The painting part of this headcanon actually made more sense than I originally thought. Because of a scene in season 1 where she's discussing art with someone, it made sense to me that she would paint or do something artistic as a side hobby. But then I saw a scene in the same episode where she's working on a painting. So I decided to incorporate that in the Sims canon as well as the novella. The grunge hippie golf part was definitely something just fun to play with because it doesn't seem to fit her canon persona. The way I'm making it make sense for my novella is saying that this is how she was before she felt that she needed to suppress that part of her while she was married into Jacob's family. And y'all know full well Lady Mae would not have accepted her that way. In the novella, I do show that not even her mother accepted her being like that. And I might incorporate her slowly going back to that. If y'all have any thoughts on that, please feel free to share in the comment section. The reason I went with guitar player because in my head canon she sings for an Afro rock band that never took off. But since I don't have the means to have Sim Kerissa sing, I compromised with guitar. That part of the headcanon was inspired by Kim Hawthorne's real life singing abilities. I've heard bits and pieces of her voice from video clips she's uploaded on Instagram, and she has a theater voice. But I thought if she were to sing in the alternative genre, her voice would fit a subgenre of rock or metal that I would know the name of, but vocally, I think she would sound similar to Jada Pinkett Smith of Wicked Wisdom, Amy Love from the Nova Twins, and a bit of Skin from Skunk Anansie. For the sim, I gave all of her outfits braid styles because I was inspired by Kim Hawthorne's character in Jeremiah named Theo who wore braid styles. Originally, I had thoughts about Theo's hair because I thought the hair department did her dirty, except in her last 2 episodes. But then I remembered that Theo lives in a post-apocalyptic world and won't have access to a beauty supply store with products to do another protective style. But her hair in the last 2 episodes was really good. For that reason, I wanted to give Kerissa braids, and I made them green because I felt like green was her favorite color based on nothing but vibes. And I later figured out how ironic it would be considering that she married into the Greenleaf family. For her outfit choices, I was inspired by a lot of grunge and Afro-goth styles and downloaded custom content to reflect that. I put her in some blacks, but a couple of reds because I thought red was a cute color on Kerissa and she should have worn it more, and some blues and greens. I didn't want her to have completely black outfits, so I chose custom content that was colorful and still fit the grunge aesthetic. Plus, I thought she would look cute wearing lots of corsets and chunky boots. That outfit idea was also inspired by her character Theo. Also changed her married last name to Sharp, which is a maiden name I created for her, and will show up in my novella. If you guys would like, I can add in her family and best friend and create a Sims gameplay series out of this. So comment down below if that is something you would be interested in. Because the Kerissa Brock ship was the inspiration behind this headcanon, I wanted to take a moment to gush about them. So if you have been paying attention to my Twitter, you would know that I have become a complete brain rot for this shit. I even went as far as to get art commission for them. This was done by Mini Box on Instagram and Kara. This information will be linked in the description. This was just supposed to be a cute and fun ship to explore, but ever since I had that dream where Kim Hawthorne married Gary Dourdan and they looked like a cute power couple, I got completely obsessed. And no, I don't ship Kim and Gary, but if they want to play a couple in a movie or something together to give me Brock and Kerissa inspiration, I won't stop them. This all started because I was watching For the Love of Ruth on a random Saturday. The film is a modern day retelling of Ruth's story from the Bible. There, Gary Dourdan plays Braxton, a retail Boaz, who owns and operates a pharmacy outside of Savannah, Georgia. I thought he was pretty and gives off this dominant but not abusive energy I liked. So I asked my bestie if I should pair him with someone, and we both agreed on Kerissa. While I was trying to figure out what kind of character I can create loosely based off him, I found out that Gary Dourdan does music that's like a mix of rock, pop, and a little blues. From there, I created a character that's an independent singer-songwriter with a dark past that he's trying to heal from because the headmistress loves a man that's in therapy that actually takes the work seriously. So I created this ship of two people trying to heal and work on themselves, and I draw them together by mutual understanding. I haven't gotten a complete plot for them yet because right now I'm just writing a bunch of scenes between them and waiting for it to come together as a plot. But I am writing a headcanon where Kerissa gets with him instead of Jacob in her younger years. Let me know if that's something y'all would be interested in reading. And the last thing for this video is a book recommendation. Adult Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers by Stephanie M. Kreisberg. I do apologize if that is not pronounced correctly. I randomly came across this book on Twitter one day and decided to check out the audiobook on Libby. The title alone made me think it could help me understand Kerissa and Zora to an extent, and how she may feel and navigate life as someone that has grown up with an emotionally abusive mother. I have yet to finish it, but it gave me great insight I could incorporate into this saga to explore. During this video, I made references from an article by the Beverly Hills Therapy Group titled The Effects of Growing Up in a Toxic Family. It did help me word and understand how the potential of Kerissa growing up in a toxic environment may have affected her marriage and her relationship with Zora. The link to this article will be in the description, as well as Kim Hawthorne's interview with Black Cinema Now. We have officially made it to the end of this video. For my last and final thoughts about Kerissa, I like to say that she needs therapy. Actually, that whole family needs therapy. They need one big old group therapy session to hash out their issues. And can I say for the billionth time that Kim Hawthorne can body annoying characters, and I need her to play a sci-fi villain at some point in my lifetime. Maybe I'll finally think of that mother-daughter story for her and Letitia Wright, set in space or something. Lastly, how did you like this video? If you made it this far in the video, please comment Kerissa had a bad mom to let me know that you stayed throughout the entire video. Please feel free to share your thoughts and opinions about Kerissa or anything I've said about her. Also, let me know if there's anything surrounding Greenleaf that you would like me to talk about, or even characters I should explore more. I think I may do a Charity Greenleaf one because I have some thoughts about her character that I don't think has been considered just yet. So I would like the opportunity to express and explore that further. And also, I have some thoughts about AJ's character. But that is all for this video. If you would like to support me with a monetary donation, the link to my Ko-fi page will be in the description. So there you will find snippets from my novel and other writing projects and exclusive flash fictions. If it's not up there by the time this video is out, I will have it up there soon, but I will post a snippet from this Kerissa Greenleaf novella. If you would like to stay up to date on more YouTube videos and podcast episodes and any other content I'm creating, you can follow me at Tallulah Chanel on Tumblr and TikTok, Tallulah Chanel 94 on Instagram, and Tallulah_Chanel on Twitter. And you can also join the Meeting Academy broadcast channel on Instagram. The link to that will be in the description as well. So thank you all for watching this video, and this has been a message from your head mistress. Bye.